This story involves me, F21, and my dad, 63. That's happened over the past 3 years, but I'll try to keep to the relevant information. It is long and I do apologize. Feel you need context. Just for context, I also have two younger brothers, 19 and 14. The older one of the two, B1, has just gone off to uni, and the younger B2 is going into year 10 doing his GCSEs. Me and my dad were never really close. He was always the logical head in our family, and my mother always handled the emotional problems. I tried to do things to please him. I am aware I'm a people pleaser, and am trying to resolve this and think of myself more, just to have something to have a bond with him, because I never really felt like I've had one with him. We have a lot in common, such as motorcycles, bushcrafting, and both work in the engineering industry. However, we never really had something related to these, and just the two of us could hang out over. The Christmas before I turned 17, my dad surprised me with my first Honda CG 125 motorcycle. He even got it in silver, because he knew how much I love the GT 500 Ford Mustang Eleanor. The bike wouldn't run, so the idea was between Christmas and my birthday in May we would completely rebuild the bike and get it running again for me to use. This happened, but I felt like I never really had a part to play in it, and it was just my dad's project, and I just occasionally came in to pass him a tool now and then, because although he was showing me some stuff, 80% of the time it didn't really feel like I was needed. I was upset at him, because I thought this would be my chance to start having a close bond with him and also learn a new skill of rebuilding a motorcycle. However, by the end it didn't really feel like either of those things were the case. I also did Army cadets for some years, where I did a lot of bushcraft-related activities and would often try to have a conversation with him about the stuff I did and all of my cool experiences I had whilst doing these things, but he didn't really look as if he was that interested, and his response after would always be cool, and that was it, the conversation was over. He's always been like that, even still to things day. I try to talk to him about work, because I now work at a shipyard as a metal fabricator, and have done for the past 3 years. I've passed my apprenticeship, and I'm the only female working there. I try to talk to him about things that happened or experiences that could come up, and I get the same impression that he's not that interested. I can feel him rolling his eyes from across the room, and I've seen him do it multiple times. Whenever this happens, I resort to the same thing, cut the story or whatever short, or sometimes I'll just stop completely and leave him alone. I don't know if he did this because where I'm a female, he doesn't feel like he can give me the best advice, or because where I'm the oldest, he doesn't feel like he needs to guide me in any way. I'm not sure, and I've played it over in my head countless times, why he might be acting like this with me and not my brothers. There was a turning point in our lives where 18 days after I turned 18, my mother collapsed on the toilet after having a heart attack. My brother woke me up for help because dad was doing a night shift and would be arriving soon. I ran to find my mum collapsed. Luckily, rather than freezing, I remembered the first aid training I had from cadets and got my younger brother to phone the ambulance, whilst me and the older brother to picked her up and brought her to the hallway outside the bathroom, so I could perform CPR on her, first and only time I've had to do it. After what felt like half an hour, we had 2 ambulances outside our front door. Paramedics upstairs shocking my mum, whilst my 2 younger brothers are downstairs talking to some other paramedics. The ones I was with tell me to go downstairs. I guess they realized that me seeing my mum as limping as one could be being shocked over and over again was an experience I wouldn't like to happen again. I go and tell the lead medic the info he needs, whilst I'm frantically phoning my dad and sending him messages saying he needs to get home now. Some time later, dad rolls up and eventually goes to the hospital with them. My mum was in the hospital for a week before they took her off the machines, and she passed away. This really shook me up because I had to do CPR for the first time on my mum and had to act logical to get my brothers to help and get my dad back home. I was also extremely close to my mum. She was my first best friend, and I'm tearing up remembering all the fun times we had. I still feel guilty because I couldn't bring her back from doing CPR, and I feel angry and upset that she was taken from us, and I won't be able to have memories with her in the future, like arguing over flower arrangements or something if I were to get married. Needless to say, a sensitive time for all of us. 3 months later, my dad comes to me and says, "Because you're my second in command, I'm telling you now. I'm sure you would expect that I'd want to move on eventually, so I've gone on a dating site and met someone, and she's coming in a week's time for the weekend." I think at this time I was still in shock from what happened and thought this might be my dad's way of coping with his feeling, so I didn't say anything because he's my dad, and I love him, and I didn't want to mess up his grieving if this was his way of dealing with it. Thought it wouldn't last, and it would be a phase, so let him crack on. I'd like to make a point that before my mum passed, my dad and her weren't in the happiest relationship from what I can tell. arguing, etc. So I don't know that if for him the relationship and his feeling were over before she passed. They are still dating now and engaged. He proposed to her around their 1-year anniversary, I think. He says their anniversary is on the 16th of September. My mum passed away on the 16th of June. They do long distance, as she doesn't live near us, and she comes down occasionally, and he goes to see her occasionally, leaving me and my brothers at home. When she's down, I'm not rude to her out of respect for my dad, but I've never once made an effort to have a relationship with her, and she hasn't with me. Over the past 3 years, we have managed with the loss of my mum. At the start, we would go do bowling or play pool every weekend as a family thing, but that's now stopped. It was tough, but we managed to function afterwards. Over the past year or so, my dad has decided to take up one of his old hobbies, fishing. He takes the boys out with him and doesn't ask me if I want to come. I've brought this up to him before, and his response is, "I'm having quality time with my boys," or "I thought you were going out this weekend," not asking me beforehand if I indeed had plans. Another thing is that when I was 16, my dad promised me that he would take me on the back of his Harley Davidson. He always came up with excuse of the weather isn't right or he was busy, so he couldn't. It took 4 years of me nagging and his new financing to him as well before he did it. For my 20th, he took me out on it. He wanted to just go for a joyride and back home. I suggested that we stop for a coffee somewhere, and we did, but we didn't chat. The whole time he looked like he wanted to leave. I've now given up with trying to bond with my dad. I would move out, but where I live I can't afford to with what I'm earning, so I've had to still live at home, and I put some money in the joint account me and my dad share every month to pay my way. I don't have a meal at home anymore and haven't for a while, so I'm not contributing towards food as I buy my own food for work. So the money I put in the joint account is to cover the bills, which I know it does because we don't have a mortgage anymore. 3 weeks ago, it came to light that my dad lost his job. He was a chief engineer for a local ferry service and he was earning a good amount. It was a shock to find out he had lost it. I found out because I overheard his speaking to his fiancée on the phone saying, "Hopefully I'm lucky tomorrow. My dad hasn't had the best health history, and he's had a heart attack before, and because of this he has an annual checkup with a doctor through the company he worked for." His visit had not long passed, so I thought it was something to do with that. When I asked, he told me that 4 months ago he got a disciplinary, and 1 month ago he was dismissed, and tomorrow he had his appeal. The way my dad's shifts work, he often got a bulk time off, so this wasn't new, and he said that it was still the leave he was on, and he hadn't officially lost his job yet. This was for surfing the internet. Apparently they changed the guidelines on it, and he wasn't made aware. When he told me this, he then said that he would be asking me to contribute more towards the house. Bear in mind, at this point he knew I was having my own problems with work and was facing potentially losing my job too. The next day was his appeal, and he didn't get his job back. He's since managed to get a part-time job, and he was wanting to retire soon. He's planning to get his pension in February, so he's not all that worried now about income, one think. I told him a few days afterwards that with something as serious as losing his job where he was making the money we lived off, that I wouldn't like to have been in the loop a lot sooner than I was. His response was, "Well, I've told you now." A week ago, me and my dad had an argument. It always starts over something ridiculous, but this one escalated. Screaming at each other. Because I felt like he didn't treat me as an adult, I said that I was only proving his point by acting childish and slamming a door. He said something like, "I'll treat you like an adult when you act like one." I ended up saying that I was acting like an adult because I stepped up when he asked me for more money because of his mess up with his job, that I didn't feel respected because he left it until last minute to tell me about his job and then proceeds to ask me for more money. I said that the amount didn't matter, as if he wants me to contribute more anyway than I would, but the fact it was in relation to his job, I feel as though I should have known way sooner. He said something I can't remember about money, and I then said, "Well, if money doesn't matter, then I won't contribute anymore." He then said I can move out then, and I haven't been home since. I messaged him a few days later saying that I think we need time to cool off, but I think we should clear the air. I went over yesterday and we spoke. I told him how I felt about the situation with his job and about his fiancée, saying as a parent I think he could have handled it better. I said that when he told me about his fiancée, there's a difference between saying I've invited her down, is that okay? And is it okay if I invite her down, saying that with one you're carrying how it affects us, and the other you've done it anyway. I did say this towards the start, not at the very start, which I think I should have done. Both times his response was, "Am I not allowed to have my own life?" After our chat, he said that he will take on board what I've said from what he said, and acting I don't think he agrees with what I said, so it's an agree to disagree to a lot of it. He said that my rent to him will go up if and when I return. When I went over, I felt drastically cold and distant from him than before. He knows I've been wanting to move out for a while, and I'm staying with a friend at the minute. I spoke to some colleagues about it, and one said, "He's your dad, you have to respect him." My opinion is that regardless of who you are, if you're acting wrongly, you need to be told so. Sorry for the extremely long post. Felt that context was needed to understand. I'm not trying to paint my dad as the bad guy. So, AITA, if I choose not to go back and remain more distant from him, or should I go back and brush all this under the rug?